Hello everyone and welcome back to another Small Soldier video. Today's video will be all about painting the base camo, chipping, and doing some acrylic mapping. So get comfortable and let's begin. One of the things I like to do before painting is use masking fluid to mask off areas where parts will be glued on. This saves me from having to scrape paint off the areas later and ensures that I'll have a good bond between the plastic parts. For priming, Mr. Surfacer are my go-to brands. They're reliable, easy to use, and most importantly, give a bulletproof bond to plastic. To ensure you have the right consistency, check the side of the cup. If it flows like this, you're good to go. It's always best to build your paint up in light layers. This way you'll prevent paint runs and it will also help preserve fine details. I find this is a very good base color for chipping on any kind of light colored paint. There are many brands of hairspray on the market. I like to use this one because I know it works and will perform every time. I prefer to decant mine and then transfer it to my airbrush cup with a pipette. This way I feel I get a little more control of how I'm applying the hairspray and how much I'm applying. I know I've applied the right amount after I see a nice even glossy coat over the whole surface. There are so many German dark yellows out there. I chose the new Tamiya dark yellow. I'm no German paint color expert, but I thought it looked pretty darn good. How much wear and tear you want to add to your model will depend on how much paint you apply. For example, a more worn vehicle just use lighter layers. I didn't want this vehicle to be too beaten up, so I decided to go with an even layer of paint. Just a reminder for you guys, when you are setting out to try a lot of these new techniques, if you haven't done them before, it's always best to practice on a paint mule, aka an old model that you've got sitting around that you don't care about anymore. There's nothing more discouraging than having that paint finish ruined by inexperience. Anyone can do these techniques, it's just a matter of practice. I came across this reference photo and yeah, I think it looks pretty good. That single green over tan I thought was a little less busy than the three-tone camo that are shown in the instructions. To get these lines as thin as possible, I decided to take the nozzle cap off, and the paint is thinned about 70% thinner to 30% paint. By removing the nozzle cap, you'll get a much finer line. If you haven't done this before, I think you should really give it a try. Just remember to not drop the airbrush or bump it up against anything, because you'll end up with a bent needle and it'll probably ruin your day. You'll also want to watch your air pressure when you're spraying. I spray at about 6 to 9 psi, and you can also see how close I'm actually spraying towards the model. You really need to get in there close to get those tight lines. I would suggest using a model to practice these fine lines on. Paper or paper towel won't react the same. This is something I find very useful for a lot of applications. It's called a wax warmer, and I find it useful for applying decals, and using the warm water aids in the chipping process. I'm using a lacquer-based paint here, so the chipping process goes a little slower than if you use an acrylic paint. I do, however, find the results to be a little more realistic, and the resulting chips are much finer in my opinion. And because the paint is a little more durable, you can be a little more aggressive with the removal techniques, therefore allowing you to use a stick, metal needle, or sanding sticks. A stick has many applications, for instance, hitting a ball, breaking a kneecap, or for getting fine, tasty chips on your models. If you've watched my channel before, you guys know of this trick already, the old tea candle in super glue trick. It really will save you a lot of time and money, so if you haven't tried this, give it a shot. I guarantee you'll like it.
Bond.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. It was the perfect setup. And let's face it, he was the best Bond. I'll still go in after the fact with a brush or sponge and just enhance some of those chips, just to define and refine some things a little more. Glazes help blend things together or soften transitions between colors. Here I'm using the glaze to just soften some of those chips and blend them back into the surface a little bit. Glazes also work great to saturate or desaturate colors. If you want to know more about glazes and washes, I have a whole video on that, and I will link that in the description below and in the upper right hand corner. This would be considered more of a wash. The color's a little more concentrated and is meant to emphasize detail. Most of you probably know this already, but I thought I would say it again for those who are new. When you're brush painting, always thin your paint, don't use it straight out of the bottle. It's better to do 2 or 3 light coats than to do 1 heavy coat. It will also alleviate brush marks, and your final results will be much smoother. Let's face it, nobody wants a lumpy paint job. The trailer cover, tarp, and leather seat are only base coated at this point. I will be adding weathering to them in the next video. And if you're interested in weathering, I have a whole video on that as well, and I will link that in the description below and also in the upper right hand corner again. Another very useful technique is a technique called mapping. With this technique, you want to use very thin layers of paint. It's very subtle, but can produce some really cool effects. I'll mainly use this when I'm trying to give a faded look to the surface or a distressed appearance. The brush movement is very random and choppy. You just kind of let the brush do its own thing. I love me some mapping. Well, I think this is probably a good place to end this video. Stay tuned though, because the next video will be all about the weathering. There is one thing I'd really appreciate you guys doing before you go. That is, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification button so you'll be notified whenever I upload a video. And certainly the most important part, give this video a like. That way YouTube knows that you like this video and they'll recommend it to others just like you. Alright, I'm out of here. I'll talk to you guys soon. Keep building those models and most importantly, keep those brushes wet.